take, it is the breath of God. Every time you go, you are intaking that which is of God, and you're reminding yourself that God can never be further away than the last breath you took and the next breath you will take. And if you try holding your breath, and unless you are a Japanese deep sponge diver, and you can manage to hold your breath for up to 20 minutes, most people can't hold their breath and separate themselves from the breath of God for longer than a minute and a half. So at best you can be a minute and a half away from God. Why do we live our lives like we are much further away? Why do we forget that every breath we take, we are breathing in the Spirit of God and the creation of God, and that the life that is within us is the life that Jesus says has the power to do all of these wonderful things, like love, understand, care. But there's something else that's really important about the Spirit of God. The Spirit of God does something else for us, because it allows us to reconnect and continually connect with God. You breathe in, you breathe out. You can stop for about a minute, minute and a half. Or at best, the humans have attained 20-minute separation from God, but that's the best you can do. You can't spend an hour away from God. There's a word that I really like. I learned to appreciate it a lot when I was in Quebec. On the license plates of every Quebec car, it says, Je me souviens. You've seen it, right? You know what it means, right? It means we remember. Souvien, from souvenir, to remember. That's why when you go places and you buy souvenirs, you're buying memories. You're buying your remembrances, your souvenirs. But in English, the word is remember. Have you ever been dismembered? You tear something apart, you dismember it. You remember it, you bring it back together. When I say, in the Spirit of God I remember, then I am reconnecting all the broken parts of my life, all the broken places of my being, and the broken connections that I have had with God. God doesn't break connection with us, but we do. We try. God never holds his breath. We hold ours. And so we try to remember. And put this in context, how we can get away from ourselves. How many people here watched or listen to or read or have watched the TV series or shows or cartoons of Garfield? Garfield's great, right? Garfield wakes up one morning, looks in the mirror and goes, "Ah!" Can't stand the look. He says, "I forgot to shave." Pulls out a razor and starts to shave. Next scene, you see John sitting at the kitchen table and a half-shaved, chinless Garfield sitting there going, "I forgot I was a cat." We do that. We forget our being. We forget our nature. We forget who we are. We forget that we are a beloved child of God. We forget that in God we are made whole. Not in everything else we are made whole. We do look to the world. We do look to other relationships. We do look to other places. We do look to other things to make us who we are. That's why the society we live in is so filled with people running madly in all directions, looking for some sense of meaning and purpose, and they haven't stopped and said, "No, here I sit. God sits with me. I sit with God. We are together. I am who I am. I remember what I'm about and who I am." The Spirit fills us with the memory of our life with God, of our being with God. The Spirit empowers us to remember who we are. And more importantly, it empowers us to remember whose we are. We are God's. As a Maritimer, I grew up with parents that every time I brought my friends home from school, even when we lived in Ontario here in Kingston, and I was so embarrassed by the fact that my parents would look at my friends from school, and the first question they would say is, "Whose are you?" because it mattered, right? That's what you say when you're, whose are you? I remember going into Riverport, Nova Scotia, the Riverport Pastoral Church. I was their minister. And I went into a home, and I was remembered not because I was the local clergy, because I was Johnny Mossman's grandson. You know? I want you to meet Tim, he's Johnny Mossman's grandson. It wasn't, I want you to meet Tim, he's the local minister. I want you to meet Tim, he's here to do this, he's here to do that. No, this is Tim, he's Johnny's grandson. Whose are you? But you know what? As much as I say that now and laugh about it, I liked it. I liked that sense of belonging. Can you imagine how much more powerful it is to know that I'm God's? I'm not just Johnny Mossman's grandson and Ray Milley's son. I'm God's child. That's what Jesus was saying to you and to me. Whose are you? You are God's. The Spirit connects you. It is this companion that reminds us. It's the friend. The Spirit is the sidekick of life that keeps us, you know, you can't do that. You shouldn't be doing that. Yeah, well, let's do that. Let's do it together. It's always better to do things with that friend, right? It's the Spirit. And the Spirit is there to comfort us, to remind us that when life does kick us around,